Welcome to Vogel Voices, a podcast put on by Vogel, which is a nonprofit here in Dallas, Texas. The purpose of the podcast is really to explain the impact that Vogel has on homeless children and their families here in Dallas. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Vogel Voices podcast. This podcast provides information about the mission, how the mission of Vogel Alcove, a nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, impacts homeless children and their families each and every day. Our mission is to help young children and their families prevent and overcome the traumatic effects of homelessness. We do this through several programs. We provide early childhood programs, we provide a health clinic, we also provide mental health services, as well as services for our families in our family support area. We do this through three campuses throughout the city of Dallas. We have our main campus, which is near downtown Dallas. We also have a north location, which is near George Bush and Preston in Dallas, and then we have in Collin County. And then we also have a south location that will open later this year near the shops of Redbird. First of all, I am Karen Hughes. I am the host of the podcast. I am also the president and CEO of Vogel. I have a degree from Baylor University in elementary education with a kindergarten endorsement. I also have a master's degree from the University of Houston-Clear Lake in educational management. I really have been on all sides of the early childhood arena my entire career. I started off as a kindergarten teacher. I then owned and directed my own child care center in Houston. I also taught classes at the community college in Houston. I also taught early childhood in pre-K classrooms. I also then went to DC and worked for the Early Childhood Major National Association as a staff member there. And then I became a CEO of two nonprofits, all of which had early childhood school-age programming and family support services part of their programming. And I've been at Vogel doing that for the past 13 years. So we're excited today to introduce you to my guest for this episode. So these are three members of my staff. We first have Christopher, who is the director of the Vogel North Campus. We also have Celeste, who is the assistant director of interventions at our main campus. And then we have Tamsyn Morison, who is our lead play therapist at our main campus. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to have you. So can you tell us each about a little bit about yourself, your background, and what your role is here at Vogel? So Christopher, you want to start with? We'll start with you.
Well, yes, thank you for having me. I am Christopher. I am the director of early childhood programs at Vogel North. My background, I have an associate's degree in early childhood education. I have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education administration. I have a master's degree in early childhood education leadership. So I've been working in early childhood for the last 13 years. Started as an assistant teacher, pre-K teacher, a lot of things. But now I'm here at Vogel as the director of early childhood programming. So I'm excited to be here.
Tamsyn?
Hi, I'm Tamsyn Morison. I'm an LPC RPT, which stands for Licensed Professional Counselor and Registered Play Therapist. I got my undergrad in psychology from A&M and then my master's in counseling from UNT. I've been at Vogel for 4 years. I've always known I wanted to work with kiddos. My first job I've ever had and throughout has always been with kiddos. And I've also been super passionate about mental health services. As a kiddo, I received free counseling. And I've always wanted to pay that forward and give counseling services to families who can't afford those. And so that's definitely something I'm able to do at Vogel. At Vogel, like Karen said, I'm the lead mental health clinician. And so part of my job is leading the mental health team, assigning referrals, helping oversee. But a big portion of my job is the play therapy piece. And so that just looks like me working one-on-one with students, pulling them out for sessions, and really working through what they've got going on. We know all of our kiddos have experienced a lot of trauma.
Yeah. And I'm Celeste. I'm the Assistant Director of Interventions at Vogel, and I have my bachelor's degree in Child and Family Studies from Baylor University, and my master's is in Human Development and Early Childhood Disorders from UTD. And I have been in the early childhood field for probably like 8+ years now. I started off at Vogel being one of the preschool teachers and really found that my niche was our kiddos that have the really big behaviors, figuring out how to help other adults work with them, and just figuring out how we could make their voice heard, but in a way that decreased them being labeled in the classrooms. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to step out of the classroom at Vogel and now into this new role where I'm able to spread the wealth and help our teachers with strategies on how to work with our kids that have bigger behaviors, to help our kids navigate through some of their big emotions so that they can have the skills to be able to leave our program and still navigate in typical society.
Terrific. You know, on our first episode, we really focused on what is truly the basis of everything we do at Vogel Alcove, which is trauma-responsive care. And we really broke that down into what it really means. But today, I wanted to take that a little step further. And since May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to really talk about what we do at Vogel to help with the social, emotional health of the children that we serve, especially since they're all in trauma. And that looks a little different from what you might expect. The approach we used is called the pyramid model, and it's based out of the National Center for the Pyramid Model Innovations. And it provides a framework that we use that is evidence-based practices about how you promote young children's social emotional development. Really, the framework itself provides universal supports. What do you need to do for all children? That's kind of the base. And then what do you do that needs some children that need an extra bit of care, more intentional, and then those that really need intervention services. So that's kind of the basis. But, you know, Christopher, you were recently in Florida and got certified in the pyramid model. So I thought we would start with you. So can you tell us a little bit about just a general overview about the tiers of the model? And then we're going to follow up about those in more detail in a minute.
Okay, so yes, I was in Florida just a few weeks ago. A great opportunity to go and learn about what Vogel does as a part of using the pyramid model. And as Ms. Karen said, I did get certified in being able to go into the classrooms and make sure our staff are using those tools and resources to make sure we serve the children as best we can. So the pyramid model is added a tier, actually. So it starts off with an effective workforce. Then you move to nurturing responsive relationships, high quality supportive environments, targeted social and emotional supports, and intensive intervention. So that model kind of gears and steers what we do here at Vogel.
Okay, so let's start with level 1, which is to provide a foundation, which really is a foundation for all children. It doesn't have to be children that are in trauma, but all children benefit from this for their emotional health. So can you describe for me what the teachers do in your center to develop those positive nurturing relationships with the children?
So yes, from day one, because of how our services are provided, we have to start from meeting with the family and learning about the child first. So getting a picture from the family, kind of understanding where they've been and what they've gone through, which helps us know how to work with them in the classroom. So it's very important that our staff meet with that family, kind of get from the parent's point of view what the child needs and what the child have experienced. And our staff, and I tell my staff all the time, we have to start with a social and emotional approach. Just because a child that's may have come from living in a car or from bouncing from house to house, they don't want to learn about ABCs from the day one. They need love and support. So we do a lot of hugging and trying to get them to understand their emotions, as Celeste said, and just providing that nurturing environment for them.
Terrific. And so you mentioned that the second level is more about the environment. So we have to start with relationships, but then it's really about the environment that the children are in. And it really needs to be high quality. Yes. And so what is quality is really defined in the industry. And NAYC accreditation standards help define that. Vogel's main campus is an NAYC accredited program. Head Start, Early Head Start, federal guidelines also help define quality. And then the state of Texas has a Rising Star program, and that also defines quality. And so Vogel's programs really meet all of those quality standards. So can you tell us some specific details about what is included in these high quality standards that can be observed if a person walks into a classroom? What are the things that they're going to see to know that environment is a supportive environment for those children's social emotional development?
So when you come into our classroom, you see common colors, you see quality equipment, you see our centers, our classrooms are sanctioned off in centers based on our curriculum, and you see evidence of the curriculum at use. And so when you come into our classrooms, you hear our staff using words that make children feel loved and appreciated and welcome to the environment. So as you walk into our classrooms, you hear our staff saying good morning. We're calling children by their names and speaking to them as they are people and persons, not just another child in our program. So going to our classroom, you will see staff playing with children and giving them that support. Some children need a lot of love, which includes hugs and high fives and fist bumps. I know as the leader of the program, I'm not in the classrooms as much as our staff, but when I go in, I see children grabbing my leg, and I don't tell them, hey, stop. No, good morning, how are you? Getting on their level. Staff understanding the child and meeting them where they are and trying to help them move from where they are to the next level.
Can you talk a little bit about another piece of the quality environment is really just the number of children that are actually in the environment and the number of staff that are in the environment. So can you talk a little bit about that? That's very difficult for some programs to be able to meet those kind of standards.
Well, in the years of COVID, we all know that staffing has been a problem. But here at Vogel, I'm so pleased that we have low staff to child ratio. So in our infant rooms, we have 4 to 1, and we can have up to 8. So that's 2 people with 8 infants. Also in our taller classroom, same thing, 4 to 1. So that allows more individualized lesson planning and allows children to get that support they need. When you have 15 to 20 children, it's hard to give them that one-on-one support. And you may have scholars that are struggling with finding their voice or just finding their way in the classroom. So when you have that low ratio, you're allowed to kind of put them to the side and have that time with them, and also having 2 paid staff in the classroom at all times helps with that as well.
So another thing that we do that's important, a lot of people, when you start talking about social emotional development, they think, oh, well, that's that fuzzy stuff. Kids just need to learn to read. They need to learn math. They need to be doing X, Y, Z at 3rd grade. But we actually get there. 75% to 80% of our kids every year that go to kindergarten are assessed to be kindergarten ready. And so we do assess them throughout the year. Can you talk a little bit about the screening we do upon entry and also the ongoing assessment that the teachers use to tailor that?
Yes, so upon entry, we use the ASQ system where the parents provide information. Then after that, our staff use that same information to rescreen, to provide referrals or things like that to make sure that the children get the services they need. We also have different assessments that are attached to our curriculum that helps the teachers to know what the children need and try to get them where they are. At the program where I am, we have such a unique opportunity because our program, they may stay with us 3 months, which is the length of the program, or they may stay 5 or 10 days. So I tell my staff we have to start from the day they walk through the doors. We have to get that picture, and that's why it's so important that we meet with the family to understand the child. So when they come in, we have that, a small picture. We won't get the full picture, but a small picture. But using those assessments day one, understanding what the child knows, allowing the child just to be who they are, just interact with them normally, and then we can serve them from just observing them, and we use those assessments once again that's attached to our curriculum to provide those services to them.
Yeah, and I think that's very important because, again, you don't have to give up the outcomes for academic and cognitive development in order to focus on social emotional. In fact, you really can't get the best cognitive outcomes if you don't focus on social emotional development. That's
so good you said that. Just think about if I come in and I'm hungry or I haven't slept at night. I'm not in my best mood. I don't want to learn. I want to sleep. I want to eat. So I tell staff, if children come in, they're a little cranky, allow them to take that 10 to 15 minute nap before they start their day, and that's going to help them have a good day and the staff. Also, if I'm hungry, didn't eat a meal last night, I haven't eaten since the day before, I don't want to come in and learn about ABCs. I'm hungry. So if we have something extra, or they come in after the breakfast is over, we still have something to serve them. That way they feel good about themselves, they're excited, and now they're ready to learn.
Terrific. Now, those things we just talked about, are universal, and that's what they call them, universal supports, because those are things that all children, young children, birth through 5, need in a quality early childhood environment. But even though we provide that, what the research shows us is that children that are in trauma, which are the children that Vogel serves, they need a little bit of extra intentional instruction on social emotional development. And so that's the second tier is that intentional instruction. And so we actually use a special, embed a special curriculum into our classroom to do that. So Celeste is going to talk a little bit about that. Celeste, you've been called the child whisperer by your supervisors because of the work amazing response you do with kids that are in the classroom that need that little extra help, especially as they're struggling with their social emotional challenges as well as managing their emotions, and it's difficult for some of the kids. I think some of us know adults that have a little bit and could use some of the strategies that you actually teach with the children to be able to manage their emotions. But, I mentioned that I taught kindergarten. And so many people think that a kindergarten teacher wants them to come to them reading and all of that. But actually, I've been there. And what you really want are children that have strong social emotional skills and they can regulate their emotions. And if you have that, then they are primed for learning what they need to be. But so many children can't do that. And so that's what the work you do intentionally in the classroom is to help children help learn to regulate those emotions. So can you talk just a little bit about that curriculum, what it is, and then give some specific examples of how we teach children with that curriculum?
Yeah, so the conscious discipline is really great because it splits it into 3 main questions that we ask every day. If the child feels safe, if the child feels loved, and what the child can learn, those problem-solving skills. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that that child feels safe. When the child feels safe, then we're able to talk to them a lot more. They're able to tell us more, whether they're telling us through their behavior or through their words. So creating a safe space in the classroom is very, very important. The teachers do that by setting some of those classroom boundaries. Here are how we can be safe within the classroom. Are you using your walking feet? Do you have your calm, quiet voice? Are you using gentle hands? And different things like that. We use our classroom commitments, which is also a part of conscious discipline, to kind of set that basis and foundation for the children. The other way that we make our kids feel safe, and like Christopher was mentioning, is building those relationships. So when they're coming into the classroom saying, "Good morning, how are you?" During circle time, talking about their feelings, singing a song, saying good morning to them. How are you feeling today? Letting the children acknowledge how they're feeling and helping them with those words, because labeling their emotions is going to be really important to helping them figure out how to handle that emotion. The other part of if they are feeling loved, are you being welcoming? Is this a space where they feel like they can be whoever they are, they can come with whatever they have, and they will still be treated the same way as everyone else with the same level of love and respect? So children want some of the same thing that we want. We want to come into spaces where we feel like we are respected, where we feel like we have ownership of who we are, and where we feel like we bring something extra to the table, and they want the same thing in the classroom. So making sure that the children feel loved, we see that in many different ways, like referring to the classroom as our school family, and checking in on our school family every day. Who's here today? Who's not? Wishing our friends who are not here today well, so that we keep them in our hearts and spirits, and we know that hopefully they'll be back tomorrow and we'll welcome them in and we'll be so glad that we've seen them. What can they learn? And that's all about the problem solving piece. So being able to take that from what we're doing in the classroom now and giving them the skills so that when they leave our program, they still have those skills to be able to problem solve. So when they have a moment where they're having those big feelings, instead of saying, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Breaking it down. Sometimes we can't even ask them any of those questions when they're in those moments. We have to calm ourselves and we have to help them calm so that they can intake the things that we're trying to tell them. So sometimes it's as simple as saying, do you need a hug? Are you okay? What can I do to help you? What happened? And getting them to kind of walk through some of those things with you so that they know, oh, I'm not going to get in trouble right now. I just don't know what to do with all these things that I'm feeling. And the adult can then step in and say, well, let's talk about why you're feeling what you're feeling and what we can do instead that would be safer, that goes along with those classroom rules and foundations that we set initially.
So I know with conscious discipline, there's a couple of very specific strategies. We teach the kids to breathe, which is an amazing thing with even adults. If you just take a breath, it can totally change your brain chemistry. One of the ones I love is the wishing well. Can you talk a little bit about the wishing well?
Yes, so the wishing well is also one of my favorites. That's the piece that allows the children to see that like it's okay not to be okay always. And so when we look at the wishing well, we're seeing pictures of all of our friends and our teachers because we're all included in the school family. And the kids are able to say, how is so-and-so feeling? We're so glad you're here today. How do you feel today? Oh, I feel great. Everyone say good morning to so-and-so, and it gives them that little recognition and it helps them to regulate. For our kids that in that moment they say the emotion that they're feeling, which we know that kids can be very honest. So if they are feeling mad, or if they are feeling like they don't want to be at school today, or if they are super sad, giving them the opportunity to voice those emotions, and then saying things to them like, well, we hope that by the end of this you feel so much better, or we can't wait to do some activities with you, and even though you're sad to be at school, we are so glad you're here, and just reinforcing some of those things. Whenever we do the wishing well, I always instruct the teachers to start off with a breath so that everyone gets themselves acclimated. With conscious discipline, there are some specific ones that you can use, but now there's so many different options of pretend play breaths, which is what I call them, to kind of engage our kids more. So instead of just saying taking a deep breath in and taking a deep breath out, maybe you're a lion, take a deep breath in, let's hear your lion roar. And that's a creative way to get them to do their breathing, especially for some of our kids that might not be into it. When we add in that play aspect, it makes them a little more engaged into the breathing, and then it ends up being something fun that they are wanting to do more often. So then when they're having their big moments, now you've talked about it as a group, you guys have practiced it. Maybe when the classroom gets a little bit chaos, you've stopped and you've practiced another breath. Then when they have their moments, you can refer to that breath to help them regulate as well.
Terrific. And another thing I like, they also talk about the kids that aren't there that day because their pictures are there, so they wish them well. One of my favorite stories is one of our children was taken by CPS and put in foster care. And so the foster care mother called back to tell the teachers or the manager of this, but they were driving up Irvay and the little girl pointed over there and said, oh, that's my school. And the foster mom said, oh, I didn't know you went to Vogel. And she said, yes. You know, I'm not there today, but I know they wished me well. So it's those kind of things that really stick with them. The other thing is I love is the pretzel. All of us, we need to know the pretzel. So can you talk a little bit about the pretzel and what that does for kids?
Yeah, so the pretzel is great because it makes them physically do the breath. So even if they are not actively doing the breathing in and the breathing out, they're doing some of the actions. So they're folding their arms over and they're focusing on crossing it under. And with that one, if they can't focus to take the breath, or they're being non-compliant in the moment and they're not wanting to do the breath, doing the actions makes them focus on something different than what may actually be happening.
Which is brain-based because it's, again, every time you cross the plane of the brain, it resets things. And again, I have a favorite story about that with a little girl that came in one day, and the mother came in and asked the case manager, what in the world is a pretzel? And she said, why do you ask? And she said, well, because this weekend I got mad at her and was yelling at her. And she just looked at me and said, Mom, you need to do the pretzel. So again, it's great to see that it's not just something we do, it's something they understand and they take it in and they use it in their real world, those different things. The other thing I think that's important to our environment with that is that so many early childhood programs, a lot of parents, they use, quote, timeout as a thing, and except they use it more as a punishment versus what it was really intended. So we have safe places. You mentioned that. So can you talk a little about how we use that, which is not timeout in the punishment mention of the word, but how do we use that?
Yeah, we use our safe places, like you said, not as a timeout, but as a space where you can calm your body. And so we let the children know that this is a space where when you feel really upset or you feel really sad, you can come to. And in those safe spaces, we have different materials that the children can use to help them calm, whether it's a teddy bear, a sensory bottle, maybe that child, it's best for them to calm by coloring. It's pretty focused on what the kids in that classroom would need. play. So the safe place could have some of the same materials, but it also could have some individualized materials so that our kiddos that do have those big moments have a space where they can have that moment, take their time to get their body calm again so that we can talk about what's going on. And it's a personal space, so we don't have to do this in front of all of your peers. We can do this in a space where, going back to that, am I safe, am I loved, we can talk about this in a safe space where we can have the conversations that help you regulate and get your mind back to where it needs to be.
Terrific. So we have what we talked about, the universal things that every child needs, and then we have the intentional, especially children in trauma need. But then even after that, are some children that are still in so much trauma and struggling with their emotions that they need definite behavior interventions. And so that's where our child therapy comes in. And so Tamsyn, you are the lead therapist. So can you talk a little bit about your role as a play therapist, and not only how you work with the child, but then how do you collaborate with the teacher and the parent so that everybody's on the same wavelength team?
Okay, and so play therapy, the way that process begins is I would get a referral. It might be from Celeste because she knows what's going on in the classroom. Maybe it's from a parent because the parent upon enrollment knows what the kiddo's been through and knows kind of the trauma they've experienced. Or maybe it might be from a teacher because a teacher is seeing that she's utilized the skills Celeste has given but still not working. Once I get that referral, I reach out to the parent and I have an interview and an intake with them and just find out about their family, learn about the bigger picture, right? We see the kids for part of the day, but there's a lot of other stuff that's happened before they got to Vogel and when they go home from Vogel. And so I really want to learn that whole picture. I'll also meet with the teachers and get their picture and their piece of the pie. Play therapy looks like a 30-minute session weekly for a 3-year-old. But once they turn 4, they can tolerate a little more time. And so from there, I'll see them for 45 minutes to 50 minutes every week. Once the kiddo comes into the playroom, it's their world. I have so many different toys in the playroom, lots of different categories. And so I have nurturing toys, I have aggressive toys, I have make-believe toys, artistic toys, really every kind of category. So whatever the child needs to communicate with me, they have that. As a play therapist, I believe a child's first language is play, and instead of words, they use toys. And so I really get this awesome glimpse into their world. They come in, they start playing, and I get to see kind of, what's going on in their little minds. And so I have lots of different skills that I convey, that I'm present and I'm here with them. I reflect meaning and feeling. So not only can I help them understand their little world, but also, like Celeste said, we want them to be able to communicate with other adults what they're feeling. And so by me reflecting different feelings, whether it's what they felt or maybe it's what the Barbie feels, they're still identifying that this feels like this, and this is the word I can tell someone for that. Also, a big piece of therapy is the relationship, and we all know how healing relationships can be, and we know that having a secure attachment with an adult means that when you grow up, you're more likely to have more secure attachments. And so we want the teachers to have that, and I also want to be a secure person for my client. And so sometimes that alone can be healing enough, but we know that our kiddos have experienced a lot of trauma and sometimes they need a little more. And so a lot of their self-esteem is pretty low and they have a lot of doubt. And so I build their self-esteem up and I return responsibility, which that kind of looks like if a kiddo needs help opening something, but I know they can do it, I'm going to remind them, hey, that looks like something you can do. And they're building that internal control that they do have abilities and values and they themselves can do things. And the last kind of biggest skill that I use is limit setting, and that really helps ground my sessions to reality. Outside of the playroom, they have rules in the classroom, they have rules with their parents, and they have to follow. It's not all about them. There's things that we are there to keep them safe. And so I will limit set to keep them safe and myself safe in the playroom. So that could look like, hey, I know you're really mad at me right now, but I'm not for hurting. You can punch the punching bag or rip a piece of paper. Once again, I'm validating that feeling because everyone's feelings are valid, but behaviors aren't always acceptable. And so also when I tell them that I'm not for hurting, I'm reminding them that they're not for hurting, people aren't for hurting. And so they're learning some messages that maybe that's not maybe something they've seen in their home, maybe they've seen people get hurt, or maybe they've seen people treated badly, but I'm reminding them that you are important and you are valued. And so that's kind of what a session could look like. And then outside of that, every 4 to 6 sessions, I want to meet with the parents. I know that I only see a kiddo for about an hour a week. And that is a tiny part of their world, and their parents and their teachers are the main people that are in their world. And so I work with the parents, teaching them skills that I use in the playroom. So if I know that a kiddo responds really well to limit setting, I'm going to teach that parent that skill and hope that they can use that language at home, reminding them that choices are so important, the language to use, and always validating their feelings. And same with the teachers. I'll meet with the teachers as needed. Sometimes it's a pretty consistent schedule because maybe we have a kiddo who's extremely dysregulated, or maybe it's a kiddo who's been in therapy a little bit longer, and so I might not meet with them as frequently, but I'm going in the classroom, I'm observing, and I'm giving them skills too, and just finding out information, because again, I get just a little picture of the pie, and so I really want to hear from the people in their lives that are the experts in their life.
So we've now talked about all of the levels of the pyramid, except the one kind of overarching. So we've talked about what's universal for everybody, quality, then the intentional instruction, and then the intervention. But overarching all of that is an effective workforce. It's all about the relationships and the people that are actually working with the children. And unfortunately, working with kids with trauma can be difficult, and it's not for everybody, and it's not for people that aren't trained. And so it's important that we have trained people, and that we hire the right kind of people, because it's not something that just necessarily comes with an early childhood degree. And so, Christopher, I want you to take just a minute and say, as you're interviewing teachers, knowing the children that we have and what their needs are, what are specific things that you're looking at past that diploma, if you will, for the right kind of mix for what we need in the classroom?
First of all, look for staff that have experience, period, because I think a lot of people feel this is a field you can walk into and work with children. So I love to see people that have not an extensive work history. You worked a lot of places, but you've had a history of longevity, and then specifically working with children in this population. So have you worked in the shelter? Have you worked in Head Start, which serves low-income families? So looking for staff that have worked in this field, but specifically with this population of children is more helpful. Like you said, just looking at the degree says early childhood, because early childhood means a lot of things to different people. And so making sure we find staff. Then while I'm interviewing them, listening to them, their responses to the questions, because many times people come in, they have all the right answers, but you're looking for that right answer to the questions, because working with these children is not an easy task. And as you said, a diploma cannot prepare you for what we do every day.
So, Celeste, just like the intentional instruction that the children get, while we look for those attributes in a teacher, I used to say when I interviewed, you got to have the Wizard of Oz. You got to have the heart, the mind, and you got to have the courage. And those are things that we need in early childhood individuals, because we want them to have the wisdom in their mind about early childhood best practices, but sometimes they don't have the heart for it. And I can teach the mind, I can't teach the heart. And that's what you've got to kind of screen out as you're working with people. And then it does take courage to work with these kids, because I had to admit, as an early childhood professional, when I started working with Vogel and kids in trauma, I didn't have a clue. I thought I knew. And it's a learning experience every single day. And so, Celeste, therefore, we have to do some intentional training with our teachers. So can you talk a little bit about what the early childhood managers do, what kind of intentional training they provide for our teachers?
Yeah, so we utilize our professional development days pretty intentionally, where we will kind of look at what our program needs right now. So while we have, because we know that teachers come and go, and that ebbs and flows, and then our kids, like what they need ebbs and flows. And so our directors are really intentional about using our PD days for some of that instruction, whether we are reviewing conscious discipline or we're reviewing, here's what that trauma responsive care truly looks like. We also step into the classroom often to do a lot of modeling. So if there is a situation where a child has is experiencing some really big feelings, the teacher kind of doesn't know how to handle it, we have developed a rapid response procedure, which means that whenever those moments happen, or maybe it's just that you have a domino effect going on in your classroom and it's just too much for those hands to handle, there are certain members of our administrative staff that will come into the classroom and will do one of two things. We will either work directly with the child that is having the moment. If the teacher feels like they've tried all that they can, they've used all the strategies in their tool belt and they just don't know what to do next. Or we'll come in and we'll navigate the rest of the classroom so the teacher can work with that child. Because what we don't want to do is take the power away from the teacher. And so if every time we come into the classroom we're working specifically with that kiddo, it could take some power away from the teacher, and we want them to be the ones that are doing the hands-on work. We also have teacher tap-outs, which is, to me, it's one of the best things that we've done. Yes, we are a trauma-informed care center, but we also have our own traumas. And so any one thing that a child could do or say or act out could be triggering to us, and then we respond in that way. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really important for us to respond from a level-headed area. So the teacher tap-out process allows for an administrative staff to come into the classroom, give that teacher a good 15-minute break where they can go to their car and scream and cry, or go into our staff lounge and use some of our self-care items, or go take a walk around the building, whatever it is they need to do to calm themselves, to be able to then continue to work with that child in a non-biased way. And so we have conversations with the teachers on the daily. We have BIRs, which are behavior incident reports. The teachers can write, and it details out the big behavior that happened. And so I can take that information to then have a conversation with the teacher, find out more about what happened. Can we figure out what was the before that triggered the behavior? Can we figure out, okay, this was the way that we handled it, but maybe next time we should try this way. My big thing is to collaborate with the teachers, because they are the ones that are in the classroom working with those kids every single day. I can come in and give a textbook, hey, let's try this, or let's do this, or here's what I've tried before. But if it's not individualized for that child and the relationship that teacher has with that child, it's not going to be as helpful. So my biggest goal when we go into the classroom is we're collaborating with the teachers. Tell me more about what happened. Tell me how you responded. Tell me how the child responded to the way you responded. And let's really figure out a way that we can make sure that we're still healing that relationship and still building that strong relationship, but letting that child know, like, hey, we have to set some boundaries here, and I'm doing this because I love you and because I want you to be safe.
Well, and what I heard in all of that is it's not like we can just say, okay, go take this course or this, get your hours in trauma responsive care. It's daily, and you've got to learn, and you got to hear it, and then you've got to go back in and do it, and every single day is a learning experience. So we really need teachers not only, again, that have the skills that Christopher talked about, we've got to have teachers that are willing to learn and that are constantly learning. But then in terms of our whole staff, it's important to me that our whole staff, whether you're a teacher in a classroom, or you're a development staff, or you're the finance person, or you're a case manager that's working with, because we work with the families as a team. And so, many times you've got mental health professionals, you've got social workers, and then you've got early childhood, and they all see the things through different lenses. And so it's very important that we bring them all together. And so to talk about that. So Tamsyn, can you talk a little bit about the things that we do that kind of apply to all our staff, and especially, like, I know y'all do what you call quarterlies, and you do those kind of things. Can you talk about how you bring everybody together and so everybody gets some training?
Yeah, definitely. I think a big part of this is we collaborate with early childhood to kind of see what the needs are. And so I would say our team, the mental health team, does training on two kind of parts. We do the part where it's trauma aware, and we're teaching the skills, we're teaching the knowledge, we're teaching about attachment styles, we're teaching about things that we know that teachers and members of our staff need to cognitively know to work with our children. But the other piece of that's kind of what Ms. Celeste was saying, is the self-care, the vicarious trauma. We know that everyone in this building is a person, and we all have our own triggers, and we need our staff to be aware of those triggers. We need them to reflect on themselves and think about their childhood or people in their life that maybe have hurt them or triggered them, and what that's gonna look like when a little 3-year-old says that to you. And so we really want staff to take a second and reflect on themselves and understand like what that means for them in their role. And like you said, the whole building interacts. So we need our front desk to know that if a kiddo's coming in crying, what can her role be in that? Same with the third floor, where my playroom's located. It's by all the development officers. I need them to know what to do if a kiddo is dysregulated and running around. And I think a big part of that is working with ECE, like Celeste mentioned, the tap out, that the cart that was created was something that my team created because of a need that we realized was happening in the building. And so we really are just aware of what's happening today and in our building. So recently we felt like there was a lot of CPS cases and a lot of just talk about CPS. And we said, why don't we educate our staff what it means to be a mandated reporter, what their rights are, what our families' rights are. And we always just want to have an open conversation no matter what the issue is, so that we're always educating ourselves. As far as kind of working as a team with all the different departments within Vogel, like you mentioned, quarterlies, in the name, that happens once a quarter. And we really take the time to go through each child. There's a piece of paper that the teachers fill out, which goes over cognitive, social, emotional, verbal, health, diet. I think I'm missing anything else. Physical, yes. Yeah. And so they bring that to our team. So we have Celeste there, ECE's there. We have our nurse. We have our social workers. I'm present. Anyone that we feel like needs to be present for this child to flourish in our program is going to be at that meeting. And we just go through each of those boxes and we learn about how we can best support that kiddo. Something that's really funny working with people is the way a parent presents to Celeste versus me versus you is going to be totally different. And we're going to hear just a little bit of their story. And so it's really helpful for us to come together and share what we know about the families, because I might know that they moved back into a shelter last week, but if the teachers don't know that, they're not going to know why they're tired and fussy. And so we really want to keep that open communication with the balance, right, of confidentiality and just giving that family that privacy. But we know that there are some information that will be really helpful for teachers to know.
And recently, I think it's very important that, there's some training that we do as a whole staff. And we recently had the entire staff, we bought books for them, and they all read the book, What Happened to You? So many times with people, when the kids are having these big behaviors, or what a lot of people label as, well, they're misbehaving, they always ask the question to the child is, what's wrong with you? When the real question that needs to be asked is, what happened to you? That's the name of the book, What Happened to You. It was written by Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a neurosurgeon in Houston, and really was one of the premier neurosurgeons that really kind of did all the brain research about how a child's brain develops. And he talks a lot about how trauma affects that. So it's all about what happened to you. And unfortunately, it doesn't go away when you get to be a certain age. Mm-hmm. It comes back again, and it stays with you unless it's really dealt with. And Oprah actually wrote the book with him about it because of the trauma that she went through in her early years. It's a great book that all the staff, but I thought it was important that everybody, no matter what level you were in the organization, you understood that about the work that we do with kids. So thank you so much for kind of going through this pyramid model and really how we really work with children and to make sure that they are social, emotional healthy. But I always like to end with some really stories and success stories. So yeah, we do all this. We've talked a lot about a strategy. We've talked about some what's good research and evidence-based kind of things. But I'd like each of you to kind of think of one child that may have been a child that had these big behaviors, or one child that really had to do a lot of things within the pyramid, but we actually saw the growth in that child and had the different outcomes. There was, like Dr. Morgan was telling the other day, about a child that literally went off. We learned to control and work with the child and have him be successful in the classroom. He hit kindergarten, and it was 2 days later they were like, what are we going to do with this child? But they actually came back and met with our team to try to put some of those same strategies together. So we do have some success stories with kids that we've helped. So can you, Tamsyn, you want to start?
Sure. I'm thinking of a kiddo that I'm working with currently, and seeing as it's the end of the school year, I thought it'd be a good story to share. And so she was referred to me when she was a 4-year-old, just having a lot of hard times in the class with emotional regulation, really hard with transitions, which is something we notice a lot with our kiddos. Transition is one of the biggest triggers. And so she was referred to me by her teacher. When I met with her mom, I found out that the same thing was happening at home. She wasn't following instructions. She had a lot of unsafe behaviors, and particularly this family, like a lot of our families, took public transportation. And that was a real big fear for mom, because my client would engage in really unsafe behaviors on the train, and there wasn't a lot of control that the mom had in that moment. And so I started seeing her. Our time together was kind of characterized by a few different themes of play. First, mastery, which that kind of looks like her showing me her abilities and me seeing her and her feeling heard. She wanted me to understand that she was worthy, that she was capable, and I'm just there to reflect that back to her and remind her that that's true. I saw a lot of play in the dollhouse, which represents relationships, and so she was navigating what it means to live in a single parent household where dad's not super present, and she's playing out some different scenarios. And then lastly, something happened on public transportation one day where the police were called, and that appeared to have really upset her and dysregulated her. And so week after week, we played out these different scenarios where she got to be different people in the situation and really process and understand, what did she witness and what did that mean? Since meeting with mom a couple times, I've heard from mom that her behaviors have decreased drastically. She is no longer being defiant or not listening to mom. Her transitions in the bus and in the train are a lot safer and smoother. And mom even said that now she's kind of become a role model for her younger sister, and is able to kind of be a helper. And so mom is also able to lean on her and give her that power too. In the classroom, she is doing a lot better with transition. She's doing a lot better following directions and instructions. We also know that trauma, like you said, comes back up again, and so it's not like every day is going to be easy for her, but she is able to be productive and engage in all the different things going on in the classroom. And so I'm really excited for her to go to kindergarten in a few months, and I know that she's going to do well both academically and social emotionally. She's ready.
That's terrific. Christopher?
I love this story because we have a scholar that's dealing with the same kind of emotions, and he is very angry. And so we noticed last week, well, I want to go back a little bit, he was actually transitioned out of our program, but thanks to our CEO, she's allowing families to come back if we have the space. And so I was like, yes, we still have some more time to work with him because he's very angry. So what I told the staff is, I said when he comes in, he needs positive affirmations, because when he comes to the door, he's already angry. So we come in, you getting fist bumps, you getting hugs. And so this morning I walked in, and the teacher was like, he's doing good. And I was like, what is he doing? She said, come right here and see. He was actually practicing writing his name. He was like, look, I'm writing my name. And it was the first thing in the morning, because his mornings are always angry and upset. And so 8:30 I walk in, he's actually writing his name calmly in the classroom. So just that positive good morning, fist bump, high five is helping him regulate his emotions in the morning. And I believe just because he was allowed to come back, we had more time to give him what he needed. Because I just feel like just because of our span that we have such a short window. So every opportunity that we have is an opportunity to make sure that we provide them with the services they need. And I think once he transitions out of our program to wherever he goes, to whether it's pre-K or kindergarten, he's going to be successful just because of that small good morning or that fist bump.
Terrific. Celeste?
I'm thinking of a kiddo who, when he first started our program, was very nonverbal, couldn't even communicate by pointing, or like there was no way that he could tell us exactly what he needed, other than he would cry or he would drop his body down. And I'm thinking of him now in the pre-K classroom that he is in, and although he's not saying all the words like a typical 4-year-old would, he communicates in his own sweet little language that all of his friends in his classroom have now learned. He points and he signs, and he'll walk over to pictures, and he has now figured out his own way to share exactly how he's feeling, exactly what he needs. He notices all the little things about all the people around him and shares that with them. I changed my hair and I walked in the classroom to say good morning one morning, and he looks at me and he goes, and so that was his little way of telling me, I really like your new hair. And so there are points in times where some of the kiddos in the classroom will tell his teachers, oh, he's saying XYZ, like this is what he means. And so not only has he been able to create his own little language, which, throughout the years we've used visuals, he's in speech therapy, and we've just used different strategies to help guide him into learning some of those things. Now he has his own little language that his friends have also learned, and they sometimes will stick up for him with adults and like, no, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, and so it's really sweet and really beautiful to watch, because we went from seeing a kiddo that couldn't tell us anything about what he needed to now he's able to tell us all that he needs, all that he wants, all that he notices, and we can tell that he's learning and intaking things. So
great. One of the stories that I love is about a little boy that one day I was we have a sensory lab at the main campus on the 3rd floor, and in that sensory lab there's these steps that go up and down, and they're like 2 steps up and down. You go to a landing and go down. And so I was just in there chatting with some of the teachers, and one of them stopped and said, he's on the steps. And I'm like, so we look over, and the little boy was going up and down the steps. And I'm like, okay, that's not like a big deal for like a 3-year-old. Why is that such a big deal? And she said, it goes back to what happened to you. And she goes, well, every day, and their classroom was on the 2nd floor, and so they have to go down the steps every day. And he said every time we try to go down the steps with him, he throws a temper tantrum, and he just literally lays out on the ground and throws a fit. And we finally found out that he had been thrown down a flight of steps and broke his leg. So he wouldn't get anywhere near that. But through the work in the sensory lab, he was getting more comfortable with it. He could go up and down the steps and then go down the steps with his class. So it's that kind of work. But again, it started with, what happened to you? Not that, what's wrong with you that you can't even walk down the steps, And so it's just that time that we take to ask those questions and really get to know our kids. So thank you so much for being with me today and for really helping bring this work to life for our listeners so that they can learn about our approach, because mental health is so important, and it's so important that we get it right in early childhood. Because if we can get it right in social emotional development in early childhood, it will affect a child's life forever. So if you're a parent or early childhood professional that's interested in learning more about the pyramid model, go to challengingbehavior.org. And you can find out a lot of information, as well as there's tons of resources there that you can use as well. But before we end today, I mentioned at the beginning that this was Mental Health Awareness Month. So I hope that everybody that's listening has been taking care and being aware of your mental health this month. It's so important, regardless of how old you are. But Tamsyn, before we close out, can you tell us some of the fun things that we're doing with some of our families and kids to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month this year?
Of course. So something that we've learned is really helpful and a great way for us to connect with families is doing these little drive-by clinics. And so during either drop-off or pickup, we set up a station and we engage with our families. We know our parents are super busy riding public transportation, getting to work, and so we want to catch them where we can. And so last Friday, we had an affirmation station where we had strips of paper and different markers, and we encouraged our parents to write multiple affirmations, take it with them, and stick it around their house. We also have created a flyer to just raise awareness of all the amazing services we have at Vogel, and that they're all free to our families. And so we touch on the play therapy, adolescent therapy, adult therapy, we have groups. And then our newest service is we partner with a nurse practitioner psychiatrist, and she's able to do medication management. And so we're just really trying to raise awareness to let our families know that exists. We also want to tap into multiple parts of mental health. We know that physical health is a big part of mental health, and so we're planning to have some kind of movement class, whether that's yoga or dance, that we can just encourage our families to move their bodies. We're also creating a journal for our families and staff that's going to have some intentional prompts that we've picked that we're going to create and hand out, because we want them to take time to journal and dump and just process what it means to be a parent. We also want to encourage our staff in their mental health. And so last year we gave out a bunch of self-care products and went around to the classrooms and just did some check-ins. And so we have something planned like that. And then at the end of this week, we like to do some little punny things to make it funny, because we know mental health can be kind of heavy. And so we're going to do not, as in donut, ignore your mental health. And we're going to give out some donuts in the morning rush of dropping off kiddos, and just, again, give out those flyers and remind our parents like what we have to offer.
Terrific. So for those of you that are listening, hopefully that you will also do some fun things for your mental health during May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So again, thank you all for being here and joining me today for our second episode of Vogel Voice. Every time that I talk about Vogel, I'm always asked by people that hear what we do is, how can I help? There's certain ways that you can help, and I encourage you. We certainly need, as I explained, we are on 3 campuses. We'll be on 4 as well, so we're expanding services. So we certainly need financial donations. We also need online donations. Right now we're heavily trying to get swimsuits and swim gear for getting ready for summer camp. But there's always a list of what we need on our website. And then we also could use volunteers. While we have talked about the very specialized staff that we have to do our programs, we also use volunteers to add to that and work with the kids in the classroom, or just do special fun projects with the children. So anyway, so volunteering, donations, online donations, or if you're interested in leadership, we also have board positions available to get more involved. So if you're interested, the best thing to do is to go to our website, which is www.vogelalcove.org, and you can get more information about that. I also invite you to join us on Facebook, because you'll see all the day-to-day kind of fun stuff that happens at Vogel every day if you go and join us on Facebook and Instagram. So again, thank you all for joining us again. I hope you will tune in and join us again for episode 3, which we will then delve into our 2-generational approach to what we do with our families, because a lot of people focus on the child, but we believe in a 2-generational approach. All the research on breaking the cycle of poverty indicates that you must work with the child and the family, and as much as you can do under the same roof, the better off you are to get the outcomes of really breaking that cycle, which will again make sure that the children that we're experiencing that are homeless today will not be homeless when they are adults. And so that's really our biggest outcome that we could have. So join us as I will interview our family support staff, our Parent Opportunities Center director, and our adult mental therapist to really talk about what we do with the families as well as the children. Thank you so much for listening to the Vogel Voices podcast. If you're interested in making a financial donation or online donations, please visit us at www.vogelalcove.org. We hope that you can come back, and we also hope that you will subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of the episodes, and also you can rate this podcast and review it as well. So until next time.